morning. It's Ginny, Tim, and Eli from DS Tech in Escanaba, Michigan. And we are going to tell you what your IT provider should be doing. And if they're not, what you should do. So how about that?
Yeah.
Visit our website and, I'll have more calls to action later on in the video. But yeah, for sure. Stay tuned because I have free assessments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
this basically talks about how it's hard to know whether your IT team is managing everything that they should be. And you're not the technical, usually as the owner, you're not, super technical, maybe you are, but if not, you're usually worried about things like risk and just business operations. So here's kind of a checklist that most, providers should be doing in this day and age. And if they're not doing it, maybe we could talk about different things like that. But for now,
I have this checklist.
Yeah.
So if you do want it, drop a check mark. Or if you're super geeky,
right.
you put Alt 251.
in the comments, yeah, if you know
Which
the
is a
old
check
chat
mark.
codes.
Anyway.
So the first one is your backup system has an on-site and off-site backup. So pretty standard nowadays. You should probably have, your local backups being backed up to your computer, a NAS, some device. You have some sort of backup in the office. But then it's most common called where they replicate that to the cloud. So that way, if something were to happen, your building burns down or some sort of crazy, there's a flood, there's a ransomware event, who knows what, and those local backups are no longer good. You can then rely on the cloud and they're separated for that reason.
Fire.
Or a fire.
We had a client back
Hurricane,
in the day,
tornado, and whatever natural disaster.
but it was back when the
absolutely.
tapes were here. We had their
Okay.
tapes
Oh,
here
gosh.
because that's what we did. We kept them off-site for them, so they had backups.
Yep. So that's a pretty common one too. Also going with the backups, a common thing that should be being done is the backups are actually tested. This one says less than 3 months ago. Realistically, I like to do at least once a month if you can, because if you do have a ransomware event or some sort of cyber event, the number one way to restore is to use a healthy backup. So if you're only testing them every 3 months or so, probably it'll be okay, but realistically, I like to usually do it once a month for, all of our VIP top tier customers. So definitely, you don't want to just rely on the automated checks too. A lot of backup software, when it backs up, it says, oh, the backup's good. Here's a green check mark. I don't trust those because I have seen it, the 1 in 100 where it doesn't work. And when you do need to turn it up, so I recommend manually turning on the backups once a month, verifying they boot up. Once you get to the Windows login screen, like I can sign in as a person, good, it works, shut it down, go to the next one. But something that
Have
you
you
should
ever seen a fake check mark?
Yes, there were backups actually seen within the last year for another client where they had an event and they had good backups that were all green and hunky-dory. And then when it went time to actually boot up one of the servers, it had like corrupted services and it wasn't booting properly and was having issues. So it was a big pain in the butt. We had to find an older version to restore to, and it was basically a thing. So I have seen the automated check marks that says your backup's good and it's just a green check. I don't believe that. I personally am always super skeptical. That's why I'm in this. Yep. I always want to manually do it and have humans test your backups regularly is what they call it. Testing your backups.
Yeah.
Don't just set it and forget it. And it's good. The backup's backing up. No, test it.
I
Try
do
to
that
turn
a
it
lot.
on. Pretend, like you needed to spin up the virtual office in the cloud to connect to it just to make sure it works. It's a huge test that not a lot of people do because it's a lot of overhead. You got to take people to do all this, but build it into the process. It's vital and it's the number one thing that'll restore in an event. So you want backups
Super
are super
important.
critical. Yes.
Absolutely.
Backups. That's why it's 1 and 2. Your backups are very important.
Number
right?
one
Right.
and number two.
So, number 3 talks about how there's only 2 domain admin accounts, us and you. So that just talks about how typically if you have an admin on site who's running things, they'll have their separate account to do things, and then we'll have a separate account for that because you should have no shared credentials. Because in the event of a hack or something happens, you need to know what user account initiated it, and by having separate accounts for everyone. And then it also means that there should not be all these other administrator accounts just floating out there. Now, maybe as needed, you might have an employee or two, like an on-site IT guy who has a separate account. That can be fine too. But in general, if you're a true small business and you're not doing any IT at all, you should have one key to your kingdom, and then we'd have a separate one separated out, and that should be it. No one else should be an admin for security purposes. Network switches and access points can be managed remotely. And
Wait a minute.
Okay.
So not everyone should be an admin?
Yeah. just because you don't like to have, you want to be able to install everything at will. It's a huge security
I
flag.
actually do remember that.
yeah.
Lots of people would have everybody an admin.
Yep,
Oh,
because it's just easier that way.
It
Everything
is.
works then. You don't have to
Yeah.
worry about it, right? But it's like nowadays, you don't want to do
It's
that
not so
because
much.
if someone ever to get into one of those accounts and they happen to be also an admin, they can do whatever they want with that account and start causing havoc on your network. So you don't want to
Oh yeah.
have that separated. This one talks about how network switches and access points can be managed remotely, and it's mainly just because of the nature of our work where we're managing all these different businesses and things like that. Instead of having a tech physically all the way to your site just to do a 5-minute job and change something and then maybe drive all the way back, and now you're paying all this extra time, is if we had it remote set up, we can fix that from 10 minutes from a phone call instead of sending someone out on site, right? So to be able to manage those things with managed switches, managed access points from the cloud remotely, it's a huge time saver. It keeps your business up better, quicker. You're not more efficient. You don't need on-site stuff.
Yeah.
And so just having those, paying that extra little bit of money to the managed switches or the cloud providers for your access points, taking that extra time. Yes, it might cost more upfront with the initial setup. You're usually paying like a cloud fee so people can access it, all this other stuff. But
Right.
those fees negate by the time you factor in 5 service calls where you're paying a tech to come on site. So just that's
Pays for itself.
yeah, exactly. The firewall has active security services if applicable. So hopefully you're not just using like a random, firewall. You bought it, like a router from Walmart, and that's your firewall for your business, and things like that. Typically, if you're going through us, we have firewalls that have additional services. You usually pay an additional licensing or get a higher quality one. But then what it does is it is literally blocking attacks at the door before they even get into your network, where they're basically stopping these TSL attacks, all these different vulnerabilities where attackers are trying to poke at your network. They just see numbers online. And if you have a good firewall with the security services, they'll prevent a lot of that stuff before it even hits the network. Therefore, it won't actually affect your speed of your users and different things like that. It's pretty good to have those built into the firewall and to pay for those extra security services. It's like intrusion prevention system is a common one, or advanced malware protection. There's different names in it depending on the firewall provider, but they're all important to have and enabled.
Linksys cable router with the firewall enabled, or Windows firewall.
Yeah, my old blue Linksys. Yeah, shouldn't be protecting millions of dollars worth of assets behind the $100 router.
I'm not picking on Linksys. I'm just that just
all
popped
or
in my head.
Netgear or whatever it is. Whatever the one is.
D-Link.
Yeah.
One is talking about how your guest Wi-Fi is segmented or separated from your private network, because it's very common where you go into places and they're like, oh yeah, use our free Wi-Fi, and if you look at the Wi-Fi, it's on the same network as their main data, and so now most people aren't going to know to look around and poke at things, but I'm a nerd, right? So when I go on site and I say, oh, free Wi-Fi here, I'll look and I'll do a quick little scan, and it's like, oh, your file server is on the same network, and if I just wanted to go to this IP, I can get into this. Silly things like that. So you want to make sure that your Wi-Fi is completely separate, and they do things called VLANs, where it's basically separate within the network. So there's no way they can access your data or your POS system or whatever it has you going on. It's simply an internet connection for guests, and that's it. So it's pretty common. Most places will have that up too. But I have seen sometimes they just for time, or they don't want to do the extra configuration, or they don't want to have a guest password and their internal password, so they just give one password and it's both, and now it's anyway. So just
or their IT person is just
you got some college kid or a high school kid setting up your IT for you or whatever. Yep, no, that can be fine too. But making sure it's separated from the production network is so key. And then you can take it steps further, where like when you have VoIP systems and data systems and all these other systems, you might have a separate subnet for each one of those, so that the voice is separated from the data, that's separated from, sometimes the POS system needs to be on its completely own VLAN as well, just to make sure the credit transactions aren't in there. And so having it made engineered properly, it will basically be a huge security one. And the nice thing is once it's engineered that way, then it's easier to maintain. But the initial setup is where people are like, I don't want to deal with all this, and they kind of just cut corners and make it easy.
I get it.
If you need to set that up and you don't know how to do it without cutting corners,
definitely reach out.
drop a phone.
Oh no, we're dropping a check mark because I'll give you the checklist that you can bring to your IT provider, or
That's 251.
Yep. This one talks about having MFA, which is multi-factor authentication set up for all your Microsoft accounts. So it's you probably heard MFA all the time now, and if you're still not sure what MFA is, basically it means when you're logging into a computer, you put your password and email in, and now you'll have a second prompt on your phone where you either have a password, a code, you hit a button. There's multiple ways to do it, but it's like having a regular key and then a deadbolt key to get into your house. You can't just get in with one. So having that on all your Microsoft accounts is important. To make sure that there's not one account out there that could be potentially scraped, because with the dark web, what happens is they give a big password list from emails that get scraped in a data leak or whatever. And so if you reuse passwords, things like that, it's always important to change your passwords and have multi-factor if someone were to get your passwords. So that way, when you're laying in bed at 2 a.m. and you're like, I'm not logging into my Amazon account right now, this is weird. You're not going to hit yes, and then it will prevent a hacker who does get your
you're going to
credentials.
go change your
from going
password.
in. That's what, yeah. If you get
Are
it
you
wrong,
logging
you're like,
from across an ocean?
yeah.
Probably not. No.
So having an MFA set up, and not just M365 accounts, but anywhere else you can.
Yeah.
If you have an accounting software or construction software, any sort of line of business software that's pretty beefy, typically they'll have ways to multi-factor and secure that software as well. So don't just do your Microsoft, do all the accounts where you can to really add that security. Do you have a defined employee onboarding and offboarding checklist? The reason this is important for security wise too is if an employee is just starting and they go through your 2-3 weeks of training, boot camp, whatever, for whatever job it is they have, now you're not going to just instantly give them like an admin account and keys to the kingdom to do whatever they want, right? There should the idea of least privilege, where they only have the necessary permissions to do their job and nothing more. And it's nothing against them. It's just for security reasons. If their account were to be compromised, they're not all of a sudden able to access other parts of the company, like accounting or something that maybe they shouldn't, right? So just making sure that you know what roles and permissions employees should have when they start. And then as they're throughout their cycle as an employee, if they move up into management or a different role, knowing what permissions go to that. And then having the offboarding is important, because then if all of a sudden you have a problem, whether they leave on their own accord or whatever happens, to be able to shut off their accounts quickly to make sure there's no damage done, and then to be able to audit the account. It's not that often, but sometimes employees, sometimes on the way out, may try to do something malicious or whatever. Typically, that's not a good idea, because you're just going to get sued and your employer's not going to like you. But having a good offboarding process defined will help if in the event you had some sort of problematic employee and you needed to do it. You're going to make sure all the steps are right, shut off in the right order, so that way they minimize the damage there.
Include some phishing training in your
Yeah.
onboarding too.
Oh yeah, definitely. The onboarding should include some sort of security awareness training, not just phishing, but malicious links. Look out for this, what you can do on the computers, what you can't do. You shouldn't be connecting your phone to the company Wi-Fi and then browsing TikTok on it. Little things like that should all be in that initial
Onboarding processes. Yeah.
yeah. So, do all your managed
Not supposed to check
devices?
TikTok? Just kidding.
Probably not. Use your own LTE.
Like
with
us
your
on
device.
TikTok,
Do all the managed devices have antivirus installed? So this one's pretty common. I mean, antivirus has been around for the longest time. All endpoints that should be used should have antivirus. It shouldn't just be like, oh, this makes my computer slow, I don't like it on it, and remove it. At that point, upgrade your computer. Don't remove the antivirus, right? So you need to have antivirus on everything. And it's
It's like throwing out your spare.
we're kind of getting into the conversation of
your safety equipment.
Where you give out company issued devices, right? It happened during the lockdowns where everyone was scrambling to work remote and everyone's just use whatever computer you have at home and whatever. It was kind of a
Security
a
nightmare.
wild west of security,
Oh,
basically.
absolutely.
Now that that's kind of calmed down, realistically, if employees are working remotely from home, you should give them a company issued computer that they use just for work and only work, and it doesn't do anything else. Make sure they're aware of that they shouldn't be like just watching Netflix and whatever else on it in their free time, browsing Facebook at night. It's for work and work purposes only, and that will make sure that it has all the same software and security software that you have in the office, and to making sure it's good. So making sure all devices have antivirus installed. The next one kind of mirrors that a little bit. It talks about, do all your devices have managed detection and response, MDR, installed? So that's basically where you have a souped up antivirus using machine learning and AI that's coupled with a SOC team, a security operations center, which has live humans in it. So if an attack were to go off at 2 a.m, you have live humans that are reviewing the alerts and then actioning the alerts. Oh, this is malicious. Yep, let's kill and quarantine it right now. Or, oh, this isn't a big deal. It's just, someone's trying to use a coupon thing on their browser, and it might scrape. Either way, you're going to have live humans looking at what's happening in a managed setting. So that's all of our software comes with that too. That's
Yeah.
there's lots of alerts, but having that SOC team is very important nowadays if you're in a business, because to be able to action on the alerts, making sure that live humans are looking at it to to work on it immediately is you don't want to just rely on the AI and that's it, right? You want to have real humans do some oversight, look at it, review, and then make the final ultimate decision if needed.
That's an alert for someone that wouldn't, in many
Yep.
cases know what it means. That is instantly processed.
Yeah, you
by
as
a
an
team
owner,
of
you're getting all these
experts.
alerts.
So, it's like, well, what is this? It's like you're
Yeah.
thinking from
Here's
a
the SHA
different
256 for this virus total link. They're like, what is
Yeah,
I don't know
whoa.
what's that, it's like, so having the alert go to a team that
Yes.
reviews it. And the cool thing with those SOC teams too is if it was a true event at 2 a.m, guess what? Phones are going to be ringing. We're going to instantly start the incident response team and take the necessary precautions to minimize the damage and stop the spreading of the infection or whatever attacks going on at that time. So it's hard to get an AV without some sort of a team behind it nowadays if you're in the corporate world, but for up and coming small businesses, it's definitely something that's a huge selling point when you're talking to your providers. Does your IT have a team behind it that reviews all the alerts? Excuse me. And that will definitely be a huge differentiator and help you get a leg up. Last one talks about, do we have spam filtering that will block and alert users if an email is potential spoofing attempt, impersonating a user, etc. So that's just, it says outside organization, inside organization, but typically you'll have another layer of antivirus on your email systems where, Microsoft has some built-in stuff you can pay for their security. There's other options out there too that we can implement where it uses machine learning and AI to look at things like the headers in the email, spoof domains, all that kind of stuff. And it does a good job of filtering, I'd say like 85-90% of all the crud out, so you don't even see it in your inbox. And now your users are just having to maybe get that really good phishing that slipped through, and ideally your security awareness training programs have them on edge to where they're not going to click any links on the email.
Yep.
They're going to the vendor website and all that other stuff we've talked about in other episodes. But
I
yeah,
like that little label that says
Yeah.
external. It
Yeah.
kind of just
Mhm.
like
It's an
mentally.
added, like,
It's-
are you sure? Almost.
it's just like a
Yeah.
quick little speed
Oh, that
bump,
looks
like
weird.
a check. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or having a little alert, like, hey, just
It's
double
enough,
check this
though,
one. And
in most cases.
yep,
Yeah.
so that can be
Just-
helpful.
Just take a tiny second
Yeah. Yep.
longer,
Yep.
Just think
to look at
before
it.
you do.
Yeah.
So
that's a good checklist.
Yeah, so that's just a
absolutely.
it's a brief review. There's much more that we can obviously help you with, but this is a
Absolutely.
great starting point. And again, it's just something to think about if you're a new small business and you're like, oh, well, we kind of got backups and we have this AV solution, but all the other stuff we haven't even touched or started MFA and etc. Just obviously reach out. We can help you on your journey and get that all set up. And then if you're an existing customer and you're like, oh yeah, do you guys, just reach out. We'll have a conversation and go through
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you love one of these bullet
Checklists.
points or checks, let us know because we could probably talk
Nope,
all
drop a
day
check.
on any one of
Yeah.
these.
Drop a check.
Drop a check.
Somebody will see
251.
the comments. Yep.
That's right.
Or like if you're super
Let us know
geeky,
by dropping a check. Yeah.
drop a check because we like the comments. I want the comments and
Absolutely.
engagement on our videos. So that's the reason, because then more people see it and we can help more people.
Yep.
So
Help the algorithm as they
yeah,
say.
help the
That's
algorithm
right.
out a little bit. Yeah, that's it. So visit our website too at dstech.net. Fill out our free security assessment form if you need one for your business, and make it a great day. We'll see you next time.